Hey, good morning, Flight Fam. So today I will be talking about the books and resources I use to pass my private pilot check ride, and basically all the books and resources I use throughout my private pilot journey. I had a couple people ask me about the basically what flight school I went to and what books and resources were really helpful. And so I wanted to make a video that would kind of clarify some things, and then I will link all the books and materials down below so that you guys can take a look at it and see if it helps you guys. But before we get into the video, guys, my name is Kevin. I am a flight attendant at a major airline in Dallas Fort Worth. I'm also a student pilot that is private pilot rated, and I will be starting my instrument flight training soon. I really appreciate you guys joining me along on my journey to get fit for flight. If you're like this little guy and you're watching this video, like and subscribe it. That is my dog Bear. I miss him so much. We had to leave him with my sister because she has a yard and a house because we just moved to Houston. And as soon as we can get a house in Houston and a yard that he can play with, I would love to bring him back. But if you are like this little guy watching this video, like and subscribe for more content, guys. Starting out as a student pilot, you have your written test. So the written test is for every rating that you do, or well, for private pilot that I know of for sure, and instrument that I know of for sure. But you have a written exam, and one thing I would recommend would be the Sporties Pilot. They have a Sporties Pilot private pilot program, and this has adaptive quizzing for your written exam. Basically, you take a lot of written exams. It shows you your weaknesses. It shows you things you're lacking in, and it'll give you more questions on that particular subject. And then you have to take the written exam as many times as you can. I took it as many times as I can until you get above a 90% twice on their written exam. So they try to make their written exams a little bit harder, and this one pretty much covered me as far as that on my written exam. I got an 87% on my written exam, which I'm actually very happy with. As long as you pass, I don't, from in my experience, it didn't seem like it made the oral check ride any harder or the mock check ride any harder. Passing is passing in aviation, and yeah, I wouldn't recommend Sporties for actual flying, like trying to learning your maneuvers and things like that. I looked at a lot of YouTube videos. Because Sporties has more of like a chapter-esque. It explains the aeronautical science behind a lot of the things that are going on. When you're doing maneuvers, you're more focused on the technical aspect of you memorizing what you need to do and things like that. So I will put a picture of the private pilot Sporties program that I used for my written exam. That was pretty comprehensive. That you will knock out your written exam if you just do the private pilot Sporties program. One thing I would recommend in my written exam, first of all, I would recommend taking your written exam before you start training and your actual flight training. And that's exactly what I'm doing for my instrument. I'm taking a break from actually flying, and then I'm gonna knock out that written exam for my instrument, and then I will start my training. And from my experience, I took a break to study for a written exam, and then I had to come back and relearn the training that I had already done. And so one thing I could recommend is knock out your written exam before you start training. Currently, I'm reading this book, Limitless. It's a New York Times bestseller by Jim Quick. Basically, he had a traumatic accident when he was a kid, and he developed a lot of learning disabilities. And so he created a lot of methods to make things easier to learn. He did a lot of research to make things easier to learn. And this is really making me kind of rethink and then look back on my training and my study habits for my private pilot, and then things I want to improve for my instrument. So if you want to do your written test from before you start your flight training, and then you maybe read this book along with it, I think this would be a great combo. Just looking back at it, this book is great. It's very interactive, and it gives you exercises to do to better help memorize things. It gives you acronyms. As pilots, we use so many acronyms that you may get sick of them, but the acronyms, I still remember a lot of my acronyms today because they're acronyms. I bought the printout books of the Pilot's Aeronautical Handbook of Knowledge for your most recent, and then I bought the printout version for the Airplane Flying Handbook. These books are very detailed. So while I did use these books, I wouldn't say I used them as much as I would have liked to, and I will probably keep using these books just as a reference and just like for my own knowledge. These books, but they're so detailed that it can be kind of hard to learn. So that would be good as far as the written exam. You do get a pre-solo test before you solo. The pre-solo is pretty easy. It's a take-home test that you fill out by yourself, and then you review with your instructor, or at least that's what it was in my experience, and that was pretty easy, and we knocked that out. Yeah, you'll be able to. There are a lot of online resources to find the answers for these quiz or for this test, and then make sure you customize it to your particular aircraft. Your maneuvers. So like I used to have this booklet. I lost. I think I left it in a plane and then it disappeared. For one of my, because this booklet was great. It was a small study handbook that I will show you a picture of it, and I'll put a link down below. But it basically went over each maneuver pretty systematically. For maneuvers, chair flying is so great. Like, it's so underrated, and my instructor kept telling me chair fly, chair fly, chair fly, and I appreciate that, because like it is so true. Well, I've only had one check ride, but every lesson that I chair flied before was a great lesson, was usually a good lesson. When I was in a hurry or didn't properly prepare for my lesson, that's usually when I was making more mistakes, I'd get more flustered, and then things would just kind of work up from there. I bought a small little plane on Amazon. Like, chair flying can get kind of boring. Like, to be honest, it can get boring. This gives you a different perspective when you're chair flying. Like, you might do steep turns and then kind of imagine yourself doing them, different things like that. As a kid, you're like playing with a small toy, you're imagining you're flying, and it really does bring some excitement back, because a lot of this studying can get tedious. This is the Sporties cockpit. I would highly recommend this for chair flying, because it gives you a visual indicators of what you need to do. It's not a cheat sheet, because like in the airplane you will have visual indicators of what you need to do. You may need to go mixture rich, you may need to go full throttle, and you're gonna actually have to use them. And then this kind of helps you create that atmosphere for chair flying. That's what I use for maneuvers. And one thing about in preparing for your oral and mock check ride is I listened to Jason Shepard's Pass My Private Check Ride on Audible. Like, I probably listened to it 20 times through, like legitimately listened to it 20 times through, and where he asks the question and then you're just listening to it, and then you can answer it, you pause to answer it, and then he gives you so much information. He lays everything out systematically, like from the beginning to the end. He lays it out. I get bored easily, and so I hate sitting down all the time and just sitting in front of a book and things like that. Like, I want to go work out, or I want to go for a jog on the drive to work, on the commute to work. I would listen to that Audible book, answer the question in my head, make it active learning, where you're participating in it, you're actively recalling the information. The Audible book, I will highly recommend that. Another thing I would also recommend is study like you're having your check ride very soon at the beginning of your training. Once I passed my written test, I took a break from really actively studying and really going into it, and I think that was kind of a detriment to my progress. I'm going to give you a couple study guides that I used. But keep at it, you know, like keep your mind actively in aviation, because you're only in the airplane so many hours of the day. So if you keep your mind in that aviation mindset, then that really helps. There's a private pilot stage check ride guide. I would print this out and start doing it from, uh, you know, like from maybe once you solo, you know, and print this out and then really work through it. I will put a link through it, but it has like so much stuff that you can just like work through and then keep going over. So many trick questions, like they're in here. Not While Jason Shepard, he covers the overview, and he does have some trick questions in it, but like this one has even more. And then I took a mock check ride, an oral mock check ride, maybe with 3 different instructors, and they are all throwing trick questions, and then they were sometimes surprised that I was familiar with some of the trick questions. So this was a great help. I printed out the oral. I printed out the Pass My Private Check Ride by Jason Shepard. And I mean, you got most of it from the Audible book, but sometimes you want to change it up and maybe go at it from a different perspective, visual learning. I also use the Airman Certification Standards. I use this book. This book gives you a great overview of what the check ride is actually going to be. So I went in it and I just marked it all up. Like I would write little diagrams, and I used the oral exam guide for the ASA private pilot. This book is probably essential as well. This book is so detailed and it'll give you every question. It is so thorough that sometimes you don't go through it all. It has every question with a well thought out answer, a systematic answer. And if you're able to like really learn this book and memorize all this stuff, the check ride will be an oral check ride will be a breeze. Like, it's so thorough, and if you do all this, wow, that's hats off to you. Yeah, this is a must. You have to get a FAR aim. This is just something you need. I bought my FAR aim online, and I thought I was gonna tab it out myself. Like, that's kind of like one of my instructors. He was like, "Oh yeah, you can just tab it out yourself." I don't know if I'd put that much effort to actually tabbing out this stuff, because there's so many online resources for tabs. This is tabbed for private and instrument. These tabs really help to find it. And then at one point in the check ride, I had a question. I had so many tabs that I couldn't even actually find one. So maybe I would just limit it to your private pilot tab out, and then maybe once you get your instrument to add that on. But yeah, these tabs made it super easy to find it. And honestly, I would when I would do questions for my study guide, I would go and find the tabbed answer, and then I would go read out it and underline or highlight the important things. For your cross country, I would get familiar with using your supplements and your maps, your symbology. You know, just be interactive with it. Like, have fun with it. Draw out trips. Yeah, this is great. You know, this is something you will need to learn. And while we do use a lot of GPS, this is a great way to learn from scratch, or like from the old way of doing it. And my instructor was pretty thorough with helping me get through this. And then I got an iPad later in my cross country training, but I got an iPad where I put more aviation things. This is Sporties, but an iPad, and I use ForeFlight as well. Buy the iPad with the GPS capability, because while the Wi-Fi only iPad, I bought that originally, and then I ended up returning it and getting one with the cellular capability. While I don't have a cellular service, the GPS works fine, and I'm still able to get my airplane, get airplane moving on the screen. And yeah, the GPS so it's Wi-Fi plus cellular capability. You don't have to buy a cellular plan, because the GPS still works. And so I use that. But yeah, that's pretty much all the resources I used. Guys, if you have any more questions, guys, comment down below. I would be glad to answer any of your questions. Thanks for watching this video this long, guys. I really appreciate you guys liking and subscribing. Thanks for joining me on my journey to get fit for flight, guys. Thanks, guys.